An incredible Christmas surprise. Little girl reveals heartwarming invitation to lonely CEO. Jack Monroe stood before the large, steel-framed window of his grand mansion, the twinkling city lights below a stark contrast to the sterile, white walls inside. Each glittering bulb outside felt like a foreign star in a vast universe, underscoring his solitude on this Christmas Eve. The chatter of families celebrating together echoed in his mind, a painful reminder of the emptiness lurking behind his corporate success. He gulped, drowned in a sea of memories, all haunting echoes of choices made. With every successful quarter he achieved, the laughter of family faded to a whisper. The profit margins that once stoked his ambition now seemed to mock him. Christmas was an elusive concept, something he used to embrace as a child, where joy came wrapped in simple moments. But it had withered into just another silent night, filled with scrolling budgets and endless spreadsheets. Hours spent at the office had reshaped him, exchanging warmth for ambition. At times, he questioned if the accolades and wealth were worth it. His life had become an equation of figures, lacking any semblance of human connection. The intangible assets counted in fleeting happiness. Would he break the cycle? The thought made his stomach churn. He dreaded the judgment of failure, fear creeping in as he confronted the reality of his hollow achievements. Should he reach out? Pick a phone to call someone. But who? The echoes answered back with hollow silence. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. He glanced around his minimalist home, the pristine surfaces reflecting only his loneliness. The starkness of his life weighed heavily like lead. Still, the invitation from that little girl he'd met at the charity gala lay crumpled on the counter. Emma's hope filled its words, a call for connection that resonated within him, yet terrified him. What would it mean to step away from this self-imposed fortress? The notion of embracing the warmth of her modest home felt both appealing and excruciatingly foreign. His instincts battled, a war over whether to chase after human connection or retreat into that comfortable isolation he had long known. Would they reject him? Would they see through his facade, the celebrated CEO, reduced to a man seeking genuine delight? He clenched his fists, sweat prickling on his brow. More than anything, he had to know if there was something meaningful beyond his walls. Just the thought of knocking on that door ignited a flutter of desperation in his chest. He had the chance for a new story to unfold before him, but the stillness of the night loomed large, wrapping him in uncertainty. Standing at the precipice between two worlds, he took a deep breath, wrestling with a decision that felt as heavy as the weight of all his past choices. Would he dare to step into a warmth he hadn't known for years? The moment felt charged with possibility, his heartbeat echoing in that stillness, teetering on the edge of belonging. Jack turned away from the window, the beckoning city lights gradually fading into the background of his mind. He was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, trapped in a dilemma that threatened to swallow him whole. Life had become a series of calculated decisions, sculpting him into a figure of prestige, but leaving behind a barren landscape of true connection. Yet, here was Emma's invitation, a flicker of hope amidst the shadows. What did it really mean to take that step, to breach the fortified walls he had built around himself? As he paced the sleek wooden floors of his home, questions gnawed at him insistently. It was more than just a visit. It felt like a first taste of change, a plunge into vulnerability. Did he even remember how to connect? The myriad of faces he encountered daily, each one a mere transaction, a whisper in the larger cacophony of his business life, had dulled his senses to the essence of humanity. With growing determination, he grabbed his coat and keys, the invitation crinkling in his hand. His mind raced as he navigated through memories of laughter, warmth, and shared moments, now buried beneath layers of corporate strife. What would the evening hold? Would it revive a piece of his soul he had long forsaken? As drove through the streets, the weight of both anticipation and trepidation settled in his chest. Arriving at Emma's small home, a stark contrast to his opulent lifestyle, he hesitated at the door. The bright wreath encircling the doorframe flickered with the spirit of Christmas, yet it felt a world apart from the corporate garlands that decorated his mansion. He had catered to the superficial all his life, but here lay an offer for authenticity. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. Emma's mother opened the door, her surprised expression morphing into a warm smile as she recognized him. "Mr. Monroe," she exclaimed, ushering him inside. Jack stepped over the threshold, the cozy warmth enveloping him like a long-lost embrace. The cheerful sounds of playful chatter, hints of spice from holiday cooking, and the glowing lights strung overhead filled the atmosphere with a richness he had not anticipated. His gaze wandered around. Family photos lined the walls, capturing moments of joy, all sparkling with life and connection. It drove home the stark contrast between this vibrant little home and the lifeless perfection of his mansion. He suddenly realized that amidst his success, he lacked this simple yet profound wealth: the laughter, the love, the intricate dance of relationships that informed real existence. "Emma will be so excited to see you," her mother said, leading him into the living room where he would inevitably meet more warmth than he had ever experienced in his vast office. As he patiently waited, Jack felt an unfamiliar flutter of nervousness twist in his stomach, real emotion breaking through the facade of the powerful so he had always worn. What if the connection he sought was right in front of him, yet slipping through his fingers because he lacked the courage to embrace it wholly? The clock ticked loudly in the background, mirroring the tensions brewing within him. Just then, Emma burst into the room, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him. "You made it," she exclaimed, as the room came alive in her radiant presence. In that instant, Jack felt the cobwebs of self-doubt begin to lift, unveiling something he hadn't allowed himself to believe in for a long time: the potential for joy, for genuine connection. But even amid this new warmth, uncertainty lingered. Could he adapt? Could he open his heart enough to cement a bond that would change his perspective forever? The path to transformation had begun, yet it was riddled with trepidation and unanswered questions. As they settled into conversation, he could feel the weight of his corporate persona begin to loosen, but the ultimate test awaited him in the ensuing moments. Would he surrender his self-imposed barriers to embrace the unfolding potential of this connecting narrative? The night was still young, and Jack knew he was standing at the threshold of a pivotal moment. With every laugh and every word spoken, the question loomed larger. When would he confront his own fears and acknowledge the directions they beckoned him towards? The realization hit him hard: this was just the beginning. The laughter in the room wrapped around Jack like a blanket, each chuckle from Emma weaving a thread of comfort he hadn't felt in years. He found himself smiling more easily than he had anticipated, nostalgia spilling forth as they reminisced about shared experiences growing up in the same neighborhood. As each story unfurled, it drew him deeper into the intimate tapestry of her life, where genuine emotions danced free of veneer. Yet with every shared anecdote, Jack felt a pang of dissonance. His stories felt hollow, stripped of the authenticity that colored Emma's words. Each moment felt like a mirror held up in front of him, reflecting the stark reality of his self-imposed isolation. The welcome embrace of warmth clashed with a suffocating realization: who was he beneath the badge of CEO? Had ambition turned him into a stranger even to himself? "What about you, Jack?" Emma's voice broke through his thoughts, her eyes searching his. "What has been your favorite memory from all those years in the big city?" For a fraction of a second, he hesitated. Instinct screamed to summon a polished version of the truth, to deploy one of his usual corporate success stories. Instead, he felt a shift within. He yearned to be real, to connect on a different level. "Honestly," he started, his voice shaky yet resolute, "I think I've spent too much time chasing what I thought I wanted. It's like I've built walls around my life, making everything transactional." Even as he spoke, he felt as though he were peeling back layers he had long forgotten existed. With each word, the urge to be truthful surged within him, eclipsing the ingrained fear of vulnerability that had held him captive for so long. The room quieted a tangible recognition that something pivotal was unfolding. "Jack, that's brave of you to say," Emma replied softly, a warmth spreading in her demeanor as if she knew the battle he waged inside. "I think everyone gets caught up in the grind. It's so easy to prioritize success over what truly matters." Her understanding struck a chord, This was not just a heart-to-heart. It was a doorway leading to yet another realization. He continued to prioritize the approval of others over his own fulfillment. In a world fixated on appearances, connection often faltered. As deep introspection settled in, he wondered, was he willing to embrace flaw and fallibility to experience something profoundly real? Can you help me with something? He asked, tentatively. Help me figure out how I don't know rebuild those connections. Can I take that risk? Emma beamed, a contagious energy illuminating the room. Of course. Finding your way back doesn't have to be scary. We can start small, just being more present, more open. It takes practice, changing habits formed over years. The encouragement surged within him, igniting sparks of hope. Jack realized that it wasn't merely about changing himself. It was also about reshaping his perspective on relationships. This wasn't just a resolution to connect, it was the inception of a new approach to life itself. As they mapped out simple steps forward, the potential for weekly gatherings, shared hobbies, or even exploring their neighborhood, it felt like the horizon began to glow with possibility. But just as excitement began to bloom, a shadow of doubt flickered in the back of his mind. Would he really commit? Could he escape the chains of his past patterns, resisting the urge to retreat when confronted with discomfort? As laughter erupted around him again, echoing with authenticity, Jack took a breath. Each commitment felt monumental, yet exhilarating. He had much to learn, and there lay the question that lingered like an open door. What would it truly take to embrace this profound change? The clock ticked steadily on the wall, and with every second that passed, he understood more clearly that this was about to become the most transformative chapter of his life. But with change comes challenge. That truth hung in the air, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the ultimate test of his courage was yet to come. Would he cling to newfound possibilities or retreat into the familiar shadows that had defined him for so long? As he scanned the room filled with Emma's love and laughter, he suddenly felt the weight of his decision resting heavily on his shoulders. The true challenge awaited. Could he embrace the complexities of real relationships and face the emotional risks they entailed? Emma's laughter continued to ripple through the room, a joyful symphony that momentarily dulled Jack's inner turmoil. But beneath that festive exterior, the anticipation of diving deeper into human connection felt daunting. His heart raced with the uncertainty of stepping out of his self-constructed fortress, yet the tether to that warmth somehow anchored him. As the evening wore on, he felt a kind of vulnerability that was both terrifying and liberating. Jack was determined to shed his corporate armor, but the weight of expectations still loomed overhead. What if he exposed himself only to be met with judgment or indifference? The risk of emotional exposure had often sent him retreating into the cocoon of business, where success could be measured, where feelings were mundane. In the days that followed, amidst the flickering lights of the holiday season, he wrestled with commitment to the connections he'd been so eager to cultivate. Each time he passed by the small coffee shop where he and Emma had initially planned to meet, a wave of hesitation surged through him. He questioned if he truly could embrace the newfound habits. Sitting alone in his car outside the cafe, the roar of city traffic felt alien. This was both a sanctuary and a jail, and within its walls, he felt the figures of past accomplishments whispering doubts. He closed his eyes and recalled how Emma had smiled at him, how genuine she was. The memory became a tether, pulling him back from the edge of retreating into his old self. Jack finally stepped out, the chilly air hitting his face, sharpening his focus. He walked toward the cafe with visible purpose, adrenaline coursing through him. On entering, he spotted Emma seated by the window, looking through a book, her face lighting up upon seeing him. In that moment, he recognized something significant. This connection was not about seeking validation, but about experiencing life in its full spectrum, risks included. "Hey, you made it," she said, closing her book and gesturing to the empty seat across from her. Each smile exchanged was a piece of armor left behind. "Yeah, I thought it was time I actually joined the living," he replied, a hint of humor masking his deeper anxiety. As they conversed, sharing interests and stories, he felt his guarded mind soften. Emma led the way, inviting him into discussions that flickered with laughter and reflection. He realized how refreshing it felt to connect over shared passions, to let the conversations meander without outcomes dictated by corporate agendas or checklist items. Just as the sun dipped low, painting the world in hues of gold and orange, she posed a question that struck at the heart of his insecurities. What is something you've never shared with anyone? A multitude of thoughts whirled in his mind, a chaotic storm of past regrets and unspoken dreams. Jack hesitated. The question hung between them, heavy and authentic. He wasn't navigating through an ordinary conversation anymore. He was standing on the precipice of deeper self-discovery. I've always wanted to write a book, he admitted, his words tentative but yearning. But I've never had the courage to start. I've always feared it would be seen as frivolous compared to my career. Emma's expression shifted from surprise to admiration. Why not? That sounds amazing. It could be your way to share your experiences, your journey. It's part of who you are. Her enthusiasm ignited a flicker of hope within him, yet a gnawing self-doubt crept in. Did he possess the skill? Did he have a story worth telling beyond the business boardrooms? As she encouraged him, promising to help, the rich aroma of coffee mixed with the scent of fresh rain filtering through the windows. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, but was still internally wrestling with the implications of embracing this dimension of himself. The realization struck like thunder. Could he truly take the leap into vulnerability by pouring his thoughts onto the page, to share his story without that curated facade? What would it mean for him to face the blank page, to dive into the very essence of his experiences and insights? The clock on the cafe wall ticked softly as they exchanged plans for more meetings, both casual and purposeful, a commitment to explore more than friendship but also reinvention. The conversation lingered in his mind, rich with potential. Yet still, in the back of his thoughts, a question echoed louder than the chatter around him. Would he follow through, breaking down the walls that barred him from both authentic relationships and his unspoken dreams? As the sun disappeared behind the city skyline, the promise of transformative challenges lingered near, hinting at choices yet to unfold. With each passing moment, Jack knew the time had come to confront not just the world around him, but the world within. Would he summon the courage to embrace this new chapter of self-discovery and risk it all, or would the echoes of his past decisions pull him back into the shadows? As Emma leaned forward, her eyes shimmering with encouragement, Jack felt the first flush of resolve emerge within. Tomorrow would be a pivotal step, but the ultimate test loomed closer. A first draft awaited. What would it reveal about him? Jack stirred awake the next morning, his mind buzzing like a beehive filled with ideas and a tinge of fear. The remnants of last night's conversation with Emma sat heavily in his chest. He stared at the ceiling, contemplating the enormity of turning his dreams into reality. Writing a book was more than a casual ambition. It felt like stepping into uncharted waters, far from the orderly shores of corporate life. After a quick breakfast that he hardly tasted, Jack positioned himself at his desk. His laptop gleamed under the overhead light, a portal filled with blank pages waiting for his thoughts to unfurl. Yet, as he opened it, an unsettling knot formed in his stomach. This was the point of no return. He took a deep breath, trying to collect elusive ideas that drifted beyond his reach. What should he write about? Would anyone care about the musings of a corporate executive? Jack's hands hovered over the keys, but dread tethered them down. Failure felt tangible, a specter hovering just out of sight. Magic rarely felt like this, he thought, wrestling with self-doubt. Where was the thrill of storytelling in the weight of his own expectations? Wasn't he writing meant to free the soul, not capture it in a cage of fear? With a clenched jaw, he typed the title he had confessed to Emma, The Art of Risk. The screen blinked back at him, and suddenly it felt all too daunting, the sacrifice of revealing his vulnerabilities for public consumption. What if the world rejected his attempts, rendering him a hollow caricature of his professional self? Narrowing his focus, he decided to begin with what he knew best. His experiences in the corporate arena masked as success, but shadowed by emotional detachment. As the words began to flow, he found unexpected solace in navigating his past with raw honesty. With each keystroke, he embarked on a journey stripped of pretense, allowing himself to dive into the emotional truths he had long hidden. His thoughts morphed into narratives of late nights spent working, the lonesomeness of boardroom victories, and the gaping void of connection that echoed louder than any applause. Perhaps this was the catharsis he sought, a chance to transform obstacles into stepping stones. Jack paused, surprised by the emotional heft. Could it be that in shaping this narrative, he also began transforming his own life? Hours slipped away like grains of sand, yet Jack remained entrenched in his creative frenzy. He drafted stories of colleagues who had greatly impacted his life, and the personal tales that seemed trivial until now. Moments of laughter, kindness, and the bittersweet pangs of loss. However, amidst the flood of creativity came a creeping sense of vulnerability. What if he overstepped, revealing too much? Each line unraveled connections he had once thought to safeguard, urging him to confront his deeper insecurities. Who was Jack, really, behind the accolades of a successful CEO? With a heavy heart, he remembered his past, the quiet nights spent alone, the relationships he had allowed to decay under career pressures, and the dreams suffocated by necessity. Would writing this book endanger everything he had built: his corporate identity, his financial security? In the midst of introspection, he noticed his phone buzz on the desk with a message from Emma. Instinctively, he opened it, finding a photo of a handwritten note fluttering in the wind, the text reading, "Your story matters. Let us shape it together." Jack's heart raced at the sincerity of her encouragement. He yearned for her guidance, yet uncertainty gnawed at him. Could he share this raw side of himself with her? As he considered her words, he recognized that this wasn't just about storytelling. It was about connection. The realization was an electrifying beacon, prompting him to break down even more barriers. Would he illuminate not just his own path in writing, but also allow others to do so through his experience? With new resolve, Jack realized he needed to take this leap, not only for his sake, but for anyone who felt trapped in a shell too rigid to break. The path was still foggy, but now illuminated with a flicker of hope. He would venture further, where each word crafted could bring him closer to authenticity. Tomorrow marked another step forward, where he would share his drafts with Emma. What would she think? Would he find the courage to face potential criticism? He quivered with anticipation as the weight of possibility hung in the air. Each stroke of creativity seemed to open doors, but it was stepping through them that would truly test his resolve. Jack's heart pumped with exhilaration and apprehension. What awaited as he braced himself for the uncharted territory of vulnerability and revelation? With the sun setting outside, he understood the journey of 1,000 words began with this single, crucial decision. Would he dare to leap? Jack woke up the next morning, suffocated by a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The day loomed ahead like a blank canvas, yet it felt heavy with the burden of his choices. Emma's text flashed in his mind, a promise of possibility that fueled his resolve. Today was the day he would share his drafts. He donned his usual work attire, but it felt more like a costume than a uniform. The crisp shirt and tailored pants fell out of place, which only amplified his internal conflict. Here he was, a CEO, who had commanded boardrooms and dealt with millions, now on the precipice of unveiling a personal narrative. It was ironic he wielded authority in the business world, yet the thought of revealing his vulnerabilities felt akin to stepping on stage without a script. Jack found himself pacing before his desk, the glow of his laptop beckoning him. Hesitating for a moment, he finally opened the document he had been fiercely typing at. His own words seemed foreign, shifting uneasily under his examination. What would Emma think? Was he ready to expose the intricate layers of his life, the pain mingled with triumph, the truths he had hidden even from himself? A knock at his door startled him, grounding him momentarily. It was Emma, her presence a mix of warmth and inspiration. She entered, her beaming smile infusing the space with energy. "Ready to dive into the world of prose?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. "Ready as I'll ever be," Jack replied, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. It felt liberating to share this moment with her, to invite someone into the chaotic world in his mind. Emma settled in beside him, her curiosity piqued. "Let us see what you've got." With hesitant fingers, Jack scrolled through his document, finally reading his thoughts aloud. The words, at first hesitant and fragmented, began to flow with the rhythm of his own revelations. As he voiced each story, the late nights, the weightless victories, he saw Emma's expression shift, each reaction a prompt for deeper exploration. Her nods encouraged him to navigate further into his discomfort. He felt a slow unraveling, a sense of liberation accompanying the admission of his weaknesses. And then he reached the heavier parts, the barriers he deconstructed over the years. I've always thought my success was rooted in achievements numbers, accolades. But it's darker than that, he admitted, feeling the weightiness of the admission as he glanced up at her. There's a loneliness that sits alongside it. Emma's gaze softened, reflecting empathy and understanding. That's the heart of your story, Jack, she said, her voice steady but gentle. Vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength. It connects us to others. Her words ignited something deep within his chest, an inkling of truth he could no longer ignore. Jack felt a surge of purpose. If his goal was to resonate, to inspire, perhaps it required the very flaws he sought to conceal. As he continued reading, he caught glimpses of himself through Emma's attentive eyes, the boy who had feared judgment, who had placed barriers around his heart for safety. It was exhilarating and terrifying to confront these memories, to question the narratives he had told himself for so long. But doubts lingered, like shadows that refused to lift. What if the world he intended to share didn't resonate? What if his story was nothing but a whisper swallowed by the vast expanse of voices? Once they finished reviewing the draft, silence enveloped them as Emma mulled over what she had heard. Jack, you're tapping into something profound. You have the chance to touch lives, to show others they're not alone in their struggles. It's a gift. A flicker of urgency ignited within him. But what if I fail? What if they hate it? Emma leaned closer, her gaze unyielding. The act of sharing is a leap of faith. But think of the people waiting to feel seen, those who need this connection. Couldn't that possibility outweigh the fear of rejection? Jack's mind raced, flooded by contrasting feelings of excitement and anxiety. His professional identity had always been about control, a well-crafted image built on certainty and success. Yet, this endeavor asked for the opposite, demanding he relinquish that need for control. As they navigated the intricacies of his story, he realized how much he craved feedback, a collaborative spirit to enhance his narrative. Yet, his instinct to guard the most intimate aspects of himself clashed against his newfound desire to connect. Eventually, they concluded their session. Emma clapped her hands in excitement, invigorated by the potential within his manuscript. Jack's resolve crystallized. He wouldn't shy away from the implications of his words. He needed to take this leap not just for him, but for those who found solace in vulnerability. As she gathered her things and readied to leave, Jack felt a rush of clarity wash over him. Thank you, Emma, he said earnestly, for believing in this not just as a story, but as a lifeline. With a knowing smile, she replied, remember, this isn't just about writing. It's about living truthfully. Watching her walk out, a thunderclap of determination surged inside him. He would weave his experiences into a narrative that shined light on the beauties and complexities of risk. Yet, a question hung in the balance as he sat back down, poised to type. Was he ready to face the fallout of that truth? Jack inhaled sharply, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What awaited him on the other side of honesty could redefine everything he had built. Bracing himself, he realized there was no turning back now. The next chapter beckoned, and it was time to write not just for himself, but for those craving authenticity. He typed. The time had come to face the true cost of vulnerability. Jack stared at the blinking cursor, the weight of doubt pressing heavily on his chest. The clean white screen felt like an abyss, one that promised both the thrill of creation and the peril of exposure. As he wrestled with the words, a faint realization swept through him, a sense of readiness, not just to write, but to fully engage with himself and his past. He breathed deeply, allowing the air to fill his lungs before releasing it slowly. The mantra Emma had instilled in him echoed in his mind, living truthfully. What was it he really sought to express? Beyond the accolades and the surface achievements, who was he at his core? The oscillation between confidence and vulnerability was dizzying, yet it also invigorated him. He began to type, forging a connection between his inner turmoil and the world outside his office. The words flowed as he recounted not only successes but the lonely nights that followed them. He recalled the lavish gatherings he hosted, surrounded by colleagues and partners, yet feeling miles apart from them, lost in a cacophony of laughter that echoed hollowly in his heart. They saw the leader. I saw the man behind the curtain, terrified of being revealed. He typed, fighting the urge to delete the raw sentence. He reminded himself this was the essence of authenticity, the fragility of his existence reflected in ink. As the clock ticked on, he began delving deeper into the memories that formed the fabric of his identity, the sacrifices made, the relationships neglected in his obsessive rise to the top. He touched on moments of failure, the times he stumbled during crucial presentations, masking embarrassment with bravado. In a world that values strength, admitting weakness felt like an unbearable sin, he wrote. Each keystroke resonated with him, binding each fragment of his story into a cohesive narrative. Still, flashes of doubt threatened to invade his composure. What if these revelations didn't resonate? What if his truth was met with derision rather than connection? Jack's head spun, and he took a moment to pause, letting the silence settle around him. In this solitude, he tried to summon the strength he had felt in Emma's presence, her unwavering belief in his narrative as a force for connection. He returned to her words, "The act of sharing is a leap of faith." It struck him that connecting with others required both courage and vulnerability. This wasn't solely an opportunity to share his story. It was a chance for him to embrace the scars that shaped him. Instead of yielding to fear, he would face it head-on. He imagined the readers strangers who might find hope in his admissions, those who felt as isolated as he did. With newfound determination, Jack resumed typing, pouring his essence into the digital ether. The narrative shifted gears as he began conceptualizing potential readers in his mind, envisioning someone, perhaps a young professional, struggling with the same burdens he once had. If my words can illuminate a path for even one person, then every self-doubt is worth it, he realized, embracing the vulnerability that had petrified him moments ago. As he navigated through the complexities of emotions and experiences, Jack felt a crescendo of clarity swelling within. By the time he reached the conclusion of his draft, he found himself energized rather than drained. He read through his words, the intricate tapestry of his life unveiled. The rawness of his thoughts hung in the air, daring him to accept this reflective journey. But as he saved the document, anticipation coursed through him. This was only a draft, a beginning. The real work lay ahead, navigating the reactions it would invoke. He wondered whether he should reach out to Emma again, to share the draft and seek her perspective, but apprehension tightened his stomach. What would she think of the depth of his honesty? Would she find it compelling or merely self-indulgent? Before he could spiral further down that path of speculation, a sudden resolve struck him. He had a duty not just to himself, but to the potential readers. This required boldness not just in writing, but in acceptance of the beauty and chaos that being human encompassed. He glanced at his phone, hesitating momentarily before composing a new message to Emma. "I've finished a draft. Can we discuss it again?" His finger hovered over the send button. His heart raced at the prospect of renewed dialogue, the chance for further exploration into not just what he had written, but what it meant for him. With a deep breath, he sent the message, feeling the flutter of uncertainty, but also a burgeoning excitement. At that moment, he understood that his journey was only beginning. The investment in his emotional truth was perilous yet liberating, and he craved the conversation ahead. What awaited him next was unknown, yet he felt the electric thrill of possibility. Time to discover the response that would either elevate his narrative or challenge him to delve deeper still. The screen's unyielding light beckoned, but so did the promise of uncharted territories waiting for him on the other side of courage. Jack's phone buzzed not long after he had sent the message. He felt his heart race as he snatched it from the table, praying for a reply. Emma's name illuminated the screen, and with a shaky breath, he opened her message. "Absolutely. Let's meet tomorrow. I can't wait to hear what you've created." The warmth of her response stoked a fire within him, igniting a blend of excitement and apprehension. After days of wrestling with his thoughts, he was poised to open up even more, sharing his truths with someone he deeply respected. Yet that very notion terrified him. As he paced the narrow confines of his office, Jack felt the walls closing in, mirroring the intensity of his internal struggle. Despite the optimistic response, what if sharing his piece invited criticism he couldn't bear? He had poured his soul onto that screen, and now risked exposing its raw essence to a critical eye. This wasn't just vulnerability. It was a crossroads between esteem and embarrassment. The next day dawned bright and clear. Jack dressed meticulously, donning a tailored blazer over a crisp shirt, his armor for the impending battle. He arrived at the cafe early, stirring his espresso with nervous energy. Each swirl of the spoon echoed his tumultuous thoughts. Could Emma's feedback shape his narrative into something more profound? As he sat tracing patterns on the table with the rim of his cup, Jack's mind wandered to the pivotal moments he had written about: the sleepless nights, the hollow triumphs. He observed people bustling by outside but felt disconnected from them, as if a glass wall separated his fears from their mundane realities. When Emma arrived, her genuine smile eased some tension in Jack's shoulders. They exchanged pleasantries, but as soon as she settled and prompted him to share his piece, his throat tightened. "Okay, here goes," he said, voice slightly wavering. He passed the laptop across the table, watching her eyes scan the words he had crafted with such honesty. She leaned in, reading intently, her expression shifting as she engaged with his narrative. Jack could feel the room pulse, an undercurrent of anticipation filling the space between them. They were both lost in separate worlds, him in the moments he described, and her sifting through his vulnerabilities like a careful curator. When she finally met his gaze, he felt an electric charge. "Jack, this is powerful. You've opened yourself up in ways that are truly brave." Her words stirred something in him, a blend of pride and anxiety swirling in his chest. He wanted to believe her, to revel in this moment of validation, but doubt crept in again. What would it mean if he had finally taken a step toward authenticity, only to realize he wasn't ready for the repercussions? "What do you think about the parts where I talk about my failures?" Jack ventured, hardly able to keep the tremor from his voice. "Am I revealing too much?" Emma paused, her gaze steely yet compassionate. "Authenticity doesn't come without risk. The truth can be messy. But this messiness is what connects us all. Your struggles resonate. They evoke empathy rather than cynicism." Her response sent pulsating warmth through him. Perhaps she was right. He was not simply bearing his soul. He was also creating avenues of connection across similar struggles in others. Yet, as the weight of her words sank in, another layer of anxiety surfaced. How would others interpret his honesty once the piece reached wider eyes? Would it transform into a mirror reflecting more judgment than acceptance? "Maybe I need to pursue deeper connections," he suggested hesitantly, contemplating his journey thus far. "But how do I navigate this? Where's the line?" Emma smiled knowingly. "You don't find the line, you create it. Remember, every connection you want to build stems from your willingness to engage. It may feel uncomfortable, but comfort isn't synonymous with growth." As she spoke about the complexities of navigating relationships, Jack felt an awakening inside him. His ambitions had long been tied to tangible success and accolades, but embracing emotion and vulnerability could shift everything. Yet, just as a buoyant thought began to swell, paranoia joined the mix. The looming concern of public perception reared its head anew. "Should I prepare for backlash? Criticism?" Jack asked, sifting through the uncertainties like sand slipping through his fingers. "Critique is inevitable, especially when you stand tall in your truth," Emma replied. "But think about the strength it takes to stay authentic in the face of that judgment." They engaged in probing discussion, exploring not just his narrative but his fears and aspirations. Each word exchanged chipped away at the walls enclosing him, allowing sunlight to pour in. The meeting felt like a revelation, yet on their exit from the cafe, Jack felt the pangs of anxiety return. What would unfold next? He was making strides toward bravely confronting his truths, yet the path felt rocky. As he left with Emma's encouragement still imprinted in his mind, he sensed a pivotal transformation lingering just beyond his grasp. Was he truly ready to embrace this emerging connection to readers, strangers who might find solace in his journey of vulnerability? With each few steps, Jack pondered the complexity that lay ahead, the challenge not just in sharing his story, but in crafting the narrative that could engage hearts. The time had come to step into that unknown space, standing firmly in his truth, and despite the risk, he felt the urgency surge as he resolved. He would push forward. But would this newfound resolve withstand the scrutiny it might attract? The following days rolled on, weaving together threads of doubt and determination. Each moment Jack found alone with his thoughts, he faced a careful balance of enthusiasm and apprehension. The cafe meeting replayed in his mind, each word from Emma echoing as both encouragement and challenge. It had been intoxicating yet terrifying. He was perched on the precipice of something vastly different than he had ever known. After countless hours perched at his desk, Jack finally revisited the draft he had shared with Emma. It emanated raw emotion, and yet, with every flicker of the cursor on the screen, he questioned its impact. His heart raced as he scrutinized his own words, dissecting the potential he had unleashed. Maybe he was digging deeper than necessary, exposing wounds that hadn't fully healed. But Emma's voice rang clear. "You're creating it." He took a breath and decided to plunge back into his narrative, resolute not to shy away from the harder truths. As Jack rewrote sections about his failures, he uncovered threads of insight, recognizing the strength hidden in vulnerability. Each line transformed with every keystroke. He embodied a sense of purpose. He found clarity even amid the chaos of self-doubt that had characterized his previous efforts. Taking a break, he stepped outside for air. The brisk touch of the wind jolted him back to present reality. They were often the moments of discomfort that led to growth. He noticed people moving in their routines, laughter mingling with the bustle of city life. A pang of isolation struck him. He was crafting narratives while others lived them. A flicker of resolve sparked within. Perhaps sharing those struggles would transform not just his story, but those of his readers too. He needed to confront the fear turning inside him like a burning ember. What if, by revealing his truth, he helped someone else feel less alone in their own battles? Jack returned to his desk, now committed to refining the narrative. He began incorporating scenes where his vulnerability had led to surprising moments of strength, where he had chosen to leverage failure as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. The blend of narrative and reflection became the lifeblood of his work, a testament to resilience that felt increasingly authentic. In tandem, the reality settled on his shoulders. Embracing vulnerability also required surrendering control over how his words would be received. That thought ignited a familiar tension. How would the audience react? Prepare for backlash? Criticism? The thought lingered, yet Jack silenced it with a firmer resolve. He would not allow lingering insecurities to sabotage his progress. Each time he pondered what others might think, he redirected that energy toward purpose and invitation to connect deeply rather than superficially. Days crept closer to the scheduled reveal of his work, a local literary showcase. Jack knew he couldn't back down now. The thought of standing before an audience forced him to confront fears he had unsuccessfully buried. What if his words fell flat? What if his story resonated only as a distant echo? But what truly mattered, he realized, was the act of sharing itself. Discomfort was merely a phase, a radical necessity driving him toward growth. With every word typed, he shaped not only the narrative but also his own identity as a writer, a creator unafraid to peel back the layers, exposing both beauty and fragility. Finally, after relentless nights and fervent revisions, Jack prepared to finalize his piece. As he reread the last lines, he felt the weight lift. A combination of fear, freedom, and undeniable excitement coursed through him. He had evolved through the process and discovered strength within authenticity. But on the cusp of completion, another nagging thought emerged unbidden. Was he really prepared for the emotional storm that feedback would unleash? Would the act of revealing himself as he had done leave him vulnerable to the world? Standing at his desk, Jack felt an electric surge of ambition and terror intertwined, a perfect backdrop for the next pivotal step in his journey. The moment of truth was approaching, and he could sense that more awaited him than he ever anticipated. Would he find the courage to stand in the light of his own revelations, ready to embrace whatever followed, or crumble under the craft he had so painstakingly shaped? Jack sat at his desk with a palpable tension in the air. The completed manuscript highlighted the transformative journey he had undergone, each word imbued with the essence of vulnerability and powerful reflection. It was both terrifying and liberating to have poured his soul onto the pages, bared under the weight of emotions he had long buried. This moment was the culmination of his metamorphosis, the journey from a lonely CEO to a man embracing authenticity. He had faced fears head-on, navigating through the dark corners of his loneliness and professional detachment. The facade that once dominated his life had begun to crumble under the weight of sincere self-exploration. Emma's encouragement echoed in his mind, providing comfort against the looming dread of exposure. Preparation for the forthcoming literary showcase loomed ever closer, and the anxiety swirling in his chest felt like a symphony of doubt and excitement. As the day of the event neared, Jack felt the evolving confidence within himself. No longer a man shrouded in his wealth and accomplishments, he had emerged as a storyteller ready to connect. He recalled Emma's earlier words, "Authenticity doesn't come without risk." The wisdom in her sentiment pulsed within him as he made his way to the venue. The heart of his transition was no longer merely about success for the sake of others' validation, but experiencing life fully, anchored by connection and truth. The venue buzzed with energy, alive with anticipation and creative spirit. Jack was filled with an exhilarating mix of nerves and determination. Standing in front of the microphone, he felt the weight of every moment that brought him here: his lonely nights, his courageous conversations with Emma, and his newly found commitment to vulnerability. He opened his manuscript, letting his eyes scan the vivid paragraphs soaked in honesty. As he began to read, the words flowed forth, rich and unguarded, resonating through the crowd. Jack spoke of sleepless nights and profound loneliness that accompanied his success, a stark contrast to the warmth filling the room. Emotional vulnerability was palpable. He reflected on the innate human desire for connection buried beneath layers of professional bravado. Each laughter and murmur from the audience felt like a tether, pulling him further into a shared experience. The feedback swelled around him, amplifying his courage with every honest revelation. For the first time, he was no longer just sharing his achievements, but inviting others into his internal struggle, forging connections that transcended mere accolades. When he concluded, silence followed, a moment suspended in time before an eruption of applause cascaded through the audience. Each clap resonated with affirmation, a powerful acknowledgement of his truth that was finally witnessed. Jack felt the tremors of fear and doubt dissipate, replaced with a profound sense of liberation. The connections he had craved were not only tangible, but genuine. Reeling in that euphoric validation, he stepped off the stage and was met by Emma, who stood smiling amidst the crowd. "You did it. You truly shared it." She beamed, warmth radiating from her eyes. Gratitude surged within him, a reminder that moments like these were the connections that had once evaded him. Jack knew that the reception mattered deeply, but so did the people he was able to touch with his words, the ones who resonated with his journey of loneliness and ambition. Speaking to them brought powerful realizations. With every narrative he had crafted, he managed not just to write a book, but also to redefine his existence. In the embrace of applause and recognition, he celebrated not just as a successful CEO, but as a man who had unearthed the very core of his being. He had ventured into the depths of vulnerability and emerged transformed, ready to forge connections that mattered. It became clear that this was the start of an ongoing journey, crafting not just a narrative, but reshaping how he would approach relationships, authenticity, and personal fulfillment moving forward. Jack had conquered his fears and unveiled a side of himself that had long been shrouded in professional armor. A newfound clarity took root within him, grounded by the understanding that life was not simply about success. It was about the spirit forged in connections, consistency, and heartfelt truth. He had not merely achieved personal fulfillment, he had become a beacon for others seeking the same. This change was not merely an end, but a new beginning infused with heart, a promise of authenticity and belonging. Now, as you witness Jack's transformational journey, it's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now and join others who resonate with these exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure more inspiring content reaches you. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's incredible ending. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this wave of connection and personal growth.